Have you ever made a balsa airplane, spent like 30 hours building it, go out to the field for the first time, so excited, and it crashes? No, well, never done that, but never made anything out of balsa. But today we are going to be 3D printing an airplane. Isn't that crazy? 3D printing airplanes. You know, I've made a lot of airplanes out of foam board, made some crazy projects out of foam board, made some crazy projects 3D printing. I've never really been able to combine the two and 3D print an airplane until now. This is a 3D printed airplane designed by Craycle, and I've spent the last few days 3D printing it. The parts actually look really good. So today I'm just going to be assembling them, gluing them together. So let's see how it goes. Maybe it'll fly, maybe it won't. Maybe it'll take forever to do. Maybe I'll have it done tonight and we can go flying. So how did we even get to this point? First, I had to find some files for this airplane. I didn't design this myself. I actually went onto Craycle.com here and I found some really cool 3D printed designs. So I'm just gonna go to STL files, aircraft files. So they've actually got some really cool 3D models here for airplanes. You can go through and pick one out that you think looks cool. I picked the Craycle Cub. It's just a beginner trainer, so hopefully it does good for me. So you can download it, and once you download it, you're gonna get a couple of things. You're gonna get the G-code files. So if you've got like a Prusa or if you've got an Ender 3 or something along those lines, you can just print those models off and the settings are already dialed in. You don't have to worry about anything. I printed this on my Bambu Lab X1 Carbon and I used bamboo slicer, so I chose to go in and manually slice my own files just because it was just a little bit easier in my application. But it was super easy. There's STL files here. I just dragged them into Bambu Lab Slicer, and the great thing about this is they've actually given you a parts list and slicer settings. So I know exactly the settings that I want to use if I need to change any of the settings from their default parameters. If you're using Cura, they've got profiles already created with the perfect settings for 3D printing this airplane. So you want to just use one wall for most of them, zero infill, zero top layers, zero bottom layers, and it tells you right here what parts need to be printed in which color, which material, and it just makes it super easy. I actually 3D printed an airplane back in the day and it was kind of daunting. I downloaded this file for Thingiverse and there was none of this documentation. The parts really didn't go together well. But it's super great to have a professional kit already ready to go. I can go into Bambu Lab, I can put together my several beds here. You see the yellow ones are PLA, and then there's a couple TPU and PETG, and then black PLA are a couple of my beds here. So we've got all the parts printed, ready to go, so let's get assembling. The first thing I want to start out here with is assembling the tail section. They've got some little tabs, as you can see, to assemble the pieces together, which makes aligning them really nice. So I'm just going to take that tab and add some glue, and I'm just going to spray the tab with some kicker, which just accelerates the reaction of the glue, and then it'll just make it drying time a little bit faster. I'm just going to do that in both of them here. So just like that, we've got our rudder piece all put together. So now let's start gluing in some hinges. So we can simply take these hinges that are flexible TPU. We'll just take and add some glue. I think I'm just gonna stick these in here without the accelerator. Okay, just like that. So let's do the same thing on the other end. Let's just add some glue here and let's stick this in together. We'll give that a couple seconds to dry, and then just like that, we've got our rudder piece all ready to go. So now let's start adding our elevators in. So to do that, we're gonna take and break this little piece that it 3D prints all together. So we're just gonna bend it apart here. You might wanna get a knife and actually cut this But just bending it like that actually gave a really nice clean cut. And I think I'm gonna do both of these at the same time. So I'm just gonna break off this one here, and then we can actually assemble these two together. There's a other part here that we can put in here as a stiffener. So we're just gonna glue that and replace. So now that we've got both of these glued together, we're gonna take and install our two pieces into our tail section itself. So I'm just gonna install these, and then we can add this in. Although I already made a mistake. This section needs to go through there. Oops, I have to reprint this. Okay, I'm back with a sharp knife trying to cut apart this so that I can fish it where it needs to go. Oof, that was tough. So what we actually need to do is we need to glue this on first and in the right orientation. So that will go there, that will go there, and then this will go in like that. So it's important when we're assembling this, there's two hinges on this side and there's one hinge on this side. We need to remember to keep that orientation. So let's get those hinges here glued in. So there's the one hinge side, and then let's get the other two hinges glued in, and then we can just glue it to the plane. So I think I'm gonna put the glue on this side of it. And I'm trying to make sure that's 90 degrees parallel with the rudder. Okay, looks good. So let's put the other one on. Let's make sure that's 90 degrees. And if you guys are wondering what glue and accelerator I'm using, I'll link it in the description below. But it's just some zip zapper, and I'll let you know how it holds up here in the end. But we should be good to now fish this through here, and then it's gonna hinge into that. And then we should just be able to put the second side on after that. So let's just go ahead and glue this on here. And now let's fish this through. And just like that, we've got ourselves an elevator. And it's kind of nice, you can see the hinges in there so that you can kind of get them aligned properly. Because the stuff's kind of like, it's transparent. You can see my fingers behind it. Let's get the other side put together here. We're gonna have to add some glue to that notch, glue that into that notch, and then fish it into that last hinge there. Okay, now we got ourselves a tail, we've got an elevator, we've got a rudder. Alrighty, so now that we've got the tail ready to go, we can start going a little bit faster and getting the rest of it glued together here. So let's just get some glue applied here. So now the next part, it's gonna use these tabs again. So these are printed separately, just a little yellow tab here. So we're gonna take and we're gonna put some dabs of glue in here. We're gonna stick our tabs in. Okay, just like that. You see we've got our tabs there. And then we can insert that into the front piece. So that's gonna add a lot of strength. So it's just really well designed and thought out for this kind of stuff to help maximize that strength, which you really want in a 3D print, in any kind of airplane, but especially a 3D printed airplane, because I generally think of them as being a little bit more fragile. But we'll see as we continue on this build how it does in the end. So let's just stick some glue on here and get this thing glued together. There we go. I'm just gonna wipe up the extra with a paper towel here. It gets a pretty good seam there. It's definitely solid. I don't think that's coming apart. Okay, so I think next we want to transition into doing the wings. So let's get our servos out because we need to put those in now so that they can be ready for when we put the wings together. I'll link the servos that I'm using in the description below, but they're just some Amazon cheap servos, 9 gram. So let's get our control horns put on and let's get our servos installed. Although it probably doesn't matter which direction you put the head on, if it's the right or the left. Just keep them the same on both of them so that you don't have any problems with the cover plates. And just like that, let's go do the same to the other side. Alrighty, so just like that, we've got both of our servos installed into our wings. So now we are ready to finish gluing together our wings. So let's just start by breaking apart these hinges again like we've done before. And we will put our TPU 3D printed hinges into here. So I'm just gonna add some dabs of glue to the hinge. And I'm just going to use the clear filament to kind of see the hinge and try to get that lined up as best as I can, left to right. Let's just go ahead and add some glue here. Okay, we got a hinge, we got a wing tip. Let's get that glued on the rest of the way.
After I put the glue on, I realized that the servo isn't centered in the wing, so the two pieces wouldn't align properly. I had to unscrew the servo while the glue was wet and re-screw it back on in the middle.
Okay, one panic later, we got ourselves a servo. And then this is gonna just snap into here. So I realized on the last one that you gotta make sure that servo is inside of the profile of the wing, because my servo was just turned ever so slightly and I wasn't able to get the thing on right. So now we have two working wings and we can now glue them together. We could go ahead and do the control horn stuff now. And that's probably the smart decision, but I want to get it on the airplane, so we're going to do that. So let's get some glue on here. Make sure you use enough here because this is a wing. We don't want that coming off. So let's get our servo wire fished through the hole. Let's get the wing glued on. Perfect. Okay. And just like before, I'm just going to wipe up the excess with the paper towel that I don't have ready. And just like that, we've got a wing on here. Okay, so we can just repeat that same process on the other side, and we should be good. Airplane, yeah, these things are a little floppy. Let's put the supports on now. So this should be as simple as taking these screws, or pretty much just, you can use servo screws, the extra ones that you don't use 90% of the time on foam board airplanes. I'll leave a link in the description below if I can find some of these on Amazon as well.
As you're screwing your wing supports in, it's important to lay the wing flat on the table so that you can make sure that you don't have any anhedral or dehedral in the wings, so they're perfectly flat. If anything, a little bit of dehedral would be good so that they're more of a V than they are an A.
Sweet. Okay. So now we got supports on our wing. Awesome, now that we've got our wings on here, let's get something else put on. Okay, let's get this front pod put on here for the motor. And we could probably put the motor mount in here before we glue that together. That would probably make this a little bit easier. So the motor's gonna be attached to the motor mount and we're gonna glue that into place right there. Okay, so I've got this 2204 Emax 2300 kV motor here. I'm gonna attach to the motor pod. So it's just gonna go on like that, and then we can get that glued up to the airframe. Okay, so now that we've got that on there, we can take and it's just gonna push in like that. And we can probably just use these screw holes to actually just screw it in place instead of really applying any glue, because then if we need to take that apart in the future, we can. So I'm just going to use the same screws that I used before to screw those in here. So I'm going to be pairing this motor with this Turner G Plush 30 amp ESC. And let's glue on those tabs here. Let's fish our wires in, let's do our test fit, and then let's glue it all together. And just like that, we've got all our electronics in here, we've got our wings on, we've got our tail on. I think the next step is to get these control surfaces hooked up. We're almost done. The specifications call for 1mm wire, so that's what I'll be using here. I've taken and bent a Z-bend into this piece of wire here. So this is going to be going into the first side, so either the servo or the linkage itself. And then we'll cut it to length and then put a Z-bend into the other side. But this Z-bend here is going to be the premise of what we're doing here entirely, of these linkages. So practice this a couple times if you need to. I just bent one side, one leg of it, and then bend the other. So we're gonna start here with the ailerons. Do those first. Make sure our control surfaces are nice and free. I think they're pretty good. So we're gonna stick this linkage, this wire, into the servo control horn. Okay, so I wanna put this into the 4th hole. So you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 6 holes here. So I'm gonna put the ones on the ailerons on the 4th hole up from the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, just like that, so that everything lines up. You can see that notch there. That's the notch that our control horn is gonna fit into when we glue it in place. So I'm just gonna kind of get an idea for where that's gonna be. I wanna line that up with the crease there of the control surface. And we're gonna go a little bit past that so that we have room to do our Z-bend. We can always cut more off, so we're just gonna go a little bit past that notch and we're gonna cut it there. So we could honestly take this out of here and do that Z-bend so that we're not constrained to the airplane. We'll just go there, and I'm gonna go like that and make my first bend. So you can see it's like that, it's 90 degrees. And then I'm gonna go halfway, put the edge of the pliers on that, and then we'll hold it so that it doesn't reduce this first bend and do our second bend. So we can now put this into our 4th hole, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we will put this into the topmost hole. And now that that control horn is in there, we can take and we can glue it in place. So we should be able to then take and put our cover plate on. It just goes on like this, and it'll go into little notches there. And I'm just going to take and screw on this cover plate here. Perfect. So that should be all good, and let's just repeat the process on the other side. Just like that, both of our ailerons are working. We've got servos hooked up. Let's get the rudder hooked up. So we need to actually install these servos still, and they're going to go right here. Move my speed controller out of the way. Let's get these opened up, get my control horns out, get them installed, and then we can get the servos into the plane. Okay, so we've got our control horns installed on there. Let's get it installed into the plane. So you notice there I cut the control horns down, so there's a little bit more room to work with in there because it's kind of tight. And then they've got to be installed, so one's pointed this direction and one's pointed this direction. Great, now that we got our servos installed here, now we can take our push wire and we can fish it through the holes that you can see that is printed into the model itself. And before we push that in there all the way, I'm going to put a Z-bend on the one end that's going into the servo. And then I'm going to push that into the servo as I install it. And what's probably going to be easier here is a modified Z-bend. So I'm going to take my Z-bend and I'm just going to turn it sideways. So now you can see that's a modified Z-bend. So I can just push it into the last hole and then turn it sideways. And now it's in there. So let's work on the back side here. So we're going to use another one of our control horns here in a second. So I just need to kind of gauge how long to make this. We'll go a little bit past the line, the pivot line. Cut it there. Looks good. And then we can do our Z-bend again. And we need to make sure that we remember the direction that we're doing the Z-bend so that it goes into the control horn. So I'm going to stick the control horn in there. So now we can glue it in place. trying to make sure there's a nice heavy bead of glue there because I don't want that coming off in mid-flight. That would be catastrophic. And just so you remember, on these servos here, we're going to go in the 3rd hole for the rudder and the elevator, the 4th hole for the ailerons. So let's take another piece of our wire here and let's do the same exact thing on the rudder. So now we've got all of our control horns hooked up, we've got all our servos hooked up. So I think it's time for the landing gear. Let's get that all assembled now. So I've set aside the plane here and I've got this sheet of paper that I printed out. So this is the instructions for the landing gear. And I will leave a link in the description below. There's some detailed instructions on how to build this plane. I'll leave in the link below and you can check those out. But I printed this landing gear instruction out so I can literally just take our wire and I will bend it according to this here, and it should lay straight on top of it, 100% scale. So for this, I'm gonna be using 2mm wire, and I'm gonna verify that this scale here is correct by measuring it before I begin, which it looks to be pretty exact. So I made sure I printed this at 100% scale. I'm gonna grab a beefier pair of pliers here as well. One beefy pair of pliers later, let's get bending. So I noticed my pair of pliers is about the width of the inside of that. So I'm just going to use that as a gauge, and we will bend this 90 degrees. And we'll bend the other side 90 degrees. And I'm going to make sure that that's correct. So it actually needs to be a little bit smaller than that. So let's bring that in a little bit. Okay, so after some tweaking, that looks a little bit better. This is critical that you get this dimension here correct, because as you can see, it's not going into the hole. So I have to tweak that a little bit to make sure that it fits. So as you can see there, I got my next bend in, and it's not exactly perfect, but I think we can make it work. Let's go for the next one. And the most important thing really here is that you get them level at the end of the day so your plane sits flat. But we've got that next bend down and it's pretty close to accurate. We'll call it good. Let's check it in the airplane here. And it's looking pretty good there. Okay, so one leg of it looks good. Let's get the other one done. Okay, it looks pretty good there, as you can see. Let's fit it into the airplane. Yeah, looks good. Okay, so let's trim that down to size there. As you can see, it might end up being a little bit longer than theirs. I think it's gonna be all right though. Let's trim the edges down. But we got our landing gear all finished up, so we're looking good there. So let's get our wheels put together. So for that, I 3D printed the wheels out of TPU. So you can see they're squishy, just like that. So they're a little bit flexible. It'll give you a flex for when you're driving around because it's wheels. So I just popped in the PLA, can't remember if that's PLA or PETG, but either one, it's a hard plastic rim. So let's just pop that in for both of them. And then after that, there's a little like core, I don't know what else you would call it here, that goes in the middle. And just like that, we're good to go. You can see the core is a little bit wider than the rim itself. So that'll probably help it to, when I slide it onto my landing gear, it doesn't hit. And I could probably ream this out with a drill bit a little bit to make that just run a little bit easier because it's kind of stiff here. Okay, so after drilling that out a little bit, it rolls so much better. So let's then stick our little cap here on there. So that prevents the wheel from falling off. And we'll leave a little bit of room so that there's a little bit of wobble in the wheel. Just so it'll help it to ride well. And then we can take our glue and let's glue it on. Gotta be careful not to glue the wheel on here at this point. One wheel down, one to go. Okay, and just like that, we got both wheels ready to go. I just want to make sure that they're kind of straight here. And you can best see that by down looking at it. You see how they're kind of a little bit crooked in a little bit. So we could just simply bend it out and make it look good. It doesn't have to be exact to the template, but the template is really nice for referencing so that we can kind of make our bends accordingly to get them pretty close. The only bend that really needs to be exact is that first bend. You can't make that too wide or it won't fit into the airplane. And it's nice if you make this bend not too wide because then it'll sit nicely on the airplane. But as long as it's close, it'll be good. Okay, so let's take and fit this into the airplane. So next we are ready to put our tail piece on, and there's two of these and there's a wheel here that we're gonna need for that, but I can't seem to find this last piece, so I might have to reprint it. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so I got all the pieces I needed for the tail wheel right here. So let's get this assembled. So let's flip over the airplane here. And then on the back side, this is where we're gonna glue on our pieces. So you see a little triangle there. So let's apply some glue. And then let's go ahead some glue to the other side here. And I'm trying to make sure those holes align when I put it together so that the wheel is straight on there. And I think it's pretty close. So that's what it looks like right now. So let's add the wheel in here. Again, there's a little TPU tire, and we'll attach our rim here. So now we've got our wheel piece all together. And we're gonna use a piece of scrap wire from the landing gear, and we'll use that to be our axle. I'm gonna use a drill here because this will probably make it easier to kind of bore out this hole so that I can fit the axle in there. Because you want it to be snug, but you don't want it to be, you don't want it to be super loose. I don't want to drill out the hole any bigger. So we're gonna now cut our wire to length. We got this tiny little piece of wire. We're just gonna fish it through with the wheel in there. Okay, and just like that, we should be good. I'm gonna add a dab of glue so that that axle stays in place. Just make sure that we don't get any glue on the wheel itself. And they suggest if you want, you can add some oil to this axle to make it kind of spin better. I think mine's probably spinning enough. It doesn't have to be super, it'll be good. Gorgeous, I love it. Okay, this thing's really coming together. So let's get the front motor pod put together and get that propeller on. It's got this cool little cover that goes on the front of the motor. So we'll get that assembled, and then we've got to get our battery strap inside of here assembled, and we're getting really close to flying this thing. So let's start with the front pod here. We just need to glue this on, and I'm going to apply the glue to the yellow piece because there's more surface area on this, and I don't really want to apply extra glue than I don't have to. So we'll let that dry for a second. We can spray some accelerator on. Now we can get our front propeller put on. This propeller here is probably a little small. It's a 6-inch propeller, but for the motor that I have on here, it's gonna have to suffice because it's a higher kV. So if you have a higher kV motor, you always want a smaller propeller so that you don't pull too much power. The kV is pretty much how fast it's spinning. So my motor is gonna spin very fast in my case. So it's gotta spin a smaller propeller so it doesn't pull more power than it would just burn up the motor if I put a large propeller on it. So if I had a lower kV motor and I try to put this propeller on it, it's gonna be perfectly fine. So you always wanna undersize your propeller so you don't accidentally burn up your motor. So I'm gonna use this 6'4" propeller. So the 6 is the length, 6 inches, 4 is the pitch. So to assemble this, it's pretty straightforward. We're gonna stick our back cowling piece on. We're gonna stick a propeller on here with the text facing outwards, and then we're gonna stick this little yellow piece on. And then we can put our motor nut on. Which makes this very difficult to tighten down because it's like so enclosed in. Okay, I think that looks pretty tight. So now let's get our front piece on. And this is actually really cool. It just kind of threads on here, so you can see. So we can tighten that down. And now we have a, what are these called even? I don't remember. Now we have a propeller culling. Look at that, looks like a real airplane right here. Let's get some of these wires figured out so that that doesn't look a mess, because I don't think that's very real looking. Before we fix all those wiring situation, let's add our battery plate here. So I've got this strap here, that's what I'm gonna use to hold the battery in the future, but I'm gonna use it to lower this in place at the moment, because this is gonna be kind of difficult reaching inside of there to get this in the right position and glued down. So we're gonna test fit this here. So it's gonna go down in there. And you can see there's a tapered side. We wanna do the tapered side down. Okay, add some glue to both ends here. Let's get that installed. Let's push that in place and let's give that a while to dry, because we definitely don't want that coming apart and our battery shifting around in the airplane, changing our center of gravity. And we're gonna leave that for a good few minutes to dry, and I'm gonna set this plane off to the side and I'm gonna be working on this little cover piece here. There's a springy piece, as you can see here, it's springing, and then there's a housing for it. So we're gonna take this piece and we're gonna glue it on. So there's a little spot there for it to be glued on. And I'm gonna add the glue to this piece so that I don't get more glue on there than I need. I'd be real careful because we don't wanna get glue into that mechanism. So this is gonna be the latching mechanism. So we're gonna take now and we're gonna screw this screw in. This is just a M3. So we wanna screw that in enough that it's still moving. So I wanna back that out a half a turn. And I'm just gonna add a drop of this multi-purpose oil so that it'll function properly. Try to work that in there. Okay, well, I kind of wish that functioned a little bit better than it does. It's just kind of working as a slide lock right now, but I think it's still gonna work just fine. Maybe if you wanted to, you could sand those pieces a little bit so that they work more fluidly before you shove them in there. Some thoughts, but I think it's gonna work out fine for us, and we can go back and get this cover plate installed when we're ready. Let's get a receiver put in here so we can get this thing working. Ailerons. There you go, it's looking good. Alrighty, so we got the build all finished up. It was a super great build, so now let's go fly the thing. I got a GoPro on to help with the center of gravity a little bit. So before you fly, you wanna check, is my center of gravity good? You can see the little spots there that you wanna hold your fingers with. So we wanna check our center of gravity, and it's looking good. If anything, you want it to be a little bit nose heavy so that it'll fly properly, because a tail heavy plane will never fly good. So let's get it all plugged in and ready to go. See the nice, okay, let's get it up there. I'm just double checking my controls are all good here. The ailerons, the rudder, the elevators all go in the right direction. My throttle's looking good. So we should be good to go. Let's do this. Why did it tip over like that? We might have to try this again another day. Oh. Well, I guess it turns out that plastic is a little bit brittle, so if you crash, you're probably not gonna be able to fly it. But we should be able to just glue that back together and it should be able to work just fine. Alrighty, well we are back. We got the plane all fixed up. The tail is looking good. I put a new motor in it. We got a new propeller, so it's a larger propeller, so hopefully that'll help with some of the tendencies that were happening yesterday. So let's see how it does. Oh. Well, this is a great flight, guys. The plane did really good. It was really wobbly up there, so it was kind of hard to keep orientation, and it was kind of hard to keep flying steady and straight. This is why a larger plane, they fly a lot smoother. This little guy is... It was a great project, but all projects have their ending. Let's go see the carnage. I had pretty good control of it. It was just so it kept like almost like it was gonna stall like every 10 seconds. I don't know why, but like I kept like having to go back down trying to get it from like stalling. So I don't know. We'll see what it looks like. I could just 3D reprint a couple pieces.
You wouldn't believe it from the looks of the crash, but the pilot survived.
The pilot survived!
No, he didn't. No, he did not.
There's a couple pieces. I mean, so this is why we build foam board airplanes, because they bounce back a lot better than this. It was a good flight, good plane. Thank you guys for helping pick up pieces. I appreciate it. Alrighty, well, this was a good adventure. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Thank you to Craycle for sending me the files for this plane, and thank you guys for watching. If you want to build one of these planes for yourself, look in the description below, click that link, and you can follow that link, and that will help me out as the channel for making this video. Thank you guys for watching. Hit that subscribe button, leave a comment what you liked best about this video. Have a great day. Bye.